Hey everybody, excellent news. We defeated David Zaslav again. Another movie is saved. This movie is called Fixed. We got another movie back from hell after Coyote vs. Acme. Everybody celebrate. Alright, so yeah, this is a complicated story because I know a little bit more than the official narrative, so let me try to tell a better story here. Alright, so Fix is an ancient project from Gendy Tartakovsky. It's one of his big passion projects. It's described as an R-rated animal road trip movie. I've heard that tonally it's supposed to be a throwback to like the X-rated adult films of the 70s, like the Ralph Bakshi sort of movies like Fritz the Cats and the others. Gendy has been trying to make this film since as far back as 2009, as the public record shows, and that's like longer than some of you have been alive. So to put that into context with things, Gendy finished working on Star Wars The Clone Wars, and then there's a 5-year mysterious gap in his career before he works on his next show to Symbiotic Titan in 2010. Supposedly, in that missing gap of 5 years, he plans out this movie start to finish. So assuming this movie just fully got time capsuled after all that, this is actually super exciting. That means we're getting peak Gendy from like the highlight of his life. That's also the reason it's being made in 2D, because in 2009, Gendy didn't know how to animate in 3D. He didn't start animating in 3D until Hotel Transylvania came out in 2012. So by all accounts, this movie is relatively a perfect time capsule movie that Gendy planned out in 2009, and then it was made exactly the way he planned it out back then, which is kind of a big deal because it's Gendy at his prime. It's season 1 Samurai Jack Gendy. It's Gendy, I'm about to make Symbiote Titan after this. So anyway, the movie has a really bizarre development. So Gendy finishes pre-production in 2009, and absolutely no one wanted to make this movie. So he just gave up and shelved it. He put it in a time capsule and he put it away. They didn't think about it for a long time after that. Now, during the long time after that, in the meantime, like a fucking decade went by, and of course, Gendy eventually left the Cartoon Network and he went on to lead up Sony Pictures Animation, where he mainly made the 4-ish Hotel Transylvania movies. Now, in between all that, he also tried to get a Popeye movie off the ground, but Sony killed it and decided to fund the Emoji movie instead in an absolute tragedy against God. Finally, Hotel Transylvania movie 3 comes out, and that one overperformed so much that Sony was like, all right, Gendy, you made us some money, so you can do whatever you want. So they finally let Gendy have this personal project, and Gendy knows exactly what he wants to do. He gets Fixed out of the time capsule, and it goes into production. So Fixed starts production in 2019, nearly 10 years after it finishes pre-production. And it ends its production in around 2023, a few months after Zaslav takes control of Warner Brothers. So here's exactly how this all played out. Gendy started working at Warner Brothers again around 2019-ish, same time this movie starts going into production, and he starts making Primal, which is a huge hit. Then he also starts making Unicorn Warriors Eternal right after that, which was okay. Now, because he wants to make this movie in 2D in that retro Cartoon Network style, he wants to make it exactly like a vintage Cartoon Network show like he used to make in 2009. And because Sony doesn't really have the infrastructure for that, but Cartoon Network does, he somehow negotiates a deal that this production will become a dual Sony Pictures Animation, dual Adult Swim, dual Warner joint project with like all these Cartoon Network animators working on it, even though it's under the Sony Pictures banner. Mostly because Gendy was working with all these people on Primal, and he wanted to use the same talent and just keep everyone working consistently. So the initial plan was that the movie was going to be given away for free as an HBO Max exclusive and just air on Adult Swim. But then later at a certain point, Zaslav comes into play, and Zaslav ruins everything as usual. So first, somehow it got tweaked that it was going to release theatrically through New Line Cinema, which is bizarre because that company has not made new movies in years. The fact that company even still exists is just so they can like collect royalties on like their old films from the 80s that still exist. So yeah, of course everything went to shit when Zaslav got involved. So this one's a major head scratcher if you look at this completely from the industry side, because Zaslav was such an out of touch monster that he essentially killed this project that Sony funded and Warner made entirely to Warner's own detriment. But because Sony funded it, he couldn't outright kill it because at the end of the day, he didn't have the rights to it. It wasn't a full Warner Brothers project. It was a joint collab between Sony and Warner. And because of this, at the end of the day, Sony never cancels projects the way fucking Zaslav does, so they wouldn't even think about that, even if maybe there are some movies that should have been canceled, but nonetheless, Warner decided not to distribute it. And so Sony was able to eventually muscle it away from Zaslav, fully back over to their camp, and fully back into the control of Gendy exclusively. So I want to lay out what happened one more time, just in like the broad strokes in case you got lost. Gendy asked Warner/Cartoon Network Studios to help him make this movie because Sony didn't have 2D animators and they did. But then when the movie was done, Zaslav strolled in like the devil, said, "I hate all animation," and seems to have pushed the movie back over to Sony, seemingly gaining nothing. Sony essentially got a free or very cheap movie out of this deal, and meanwhile Warner did a ton of work here that they likely won't see any benefit from. So once again, brilliant decision from Zaslav, the most highest paid CEO in Hollywood, really earning that CEO money, right? So I guess hopefully the animators got paid a day rate on this one, because theoretically Warner disowning it could throw off their royalties. But anyway, so then apparently after that, Sony's been trying to get the movie distributed and released for about 2 years now. And yeah, this tracks with what I knew, because I knew it wasn't canceled, but apparently no one wanted to distribute it because it's exactly like all those old X-rated Ralph Bakshi movies from the 70s it's based on. And it's a dirty dog and cat movie for adults, and that's a hard sale like pretty much anywhere. Amazon apparently fully didn't want it, and so eventually Sony had a long-standing deal with Netflix that they were able to muscle it onto there. Netflix eventually took it, and I kind of sense they took it reluctantly, as they decided to just dump it on streaming, probably with not much ado at the end of the day. Now, they've released a new photo of the film that shows like a single screenshot of what we should expect here. It's fully 2D. It's got that old Ralph Bakshi, Robert Crumb, almost Cartoon Network style. It shows this dog humping a wrinkly old lady's fat leg. I definitely feel some Bakshi Crumb vibes from this. And yeah, Netflix is saying that the movie is overall sweet and charming, but I don't know, it's about a dog getting its how sweet and charming can you make that? Anyway, so what do you guys think about this one? I gotta say, overall, this is another victory for the audience, because we got another animated movie back from Zaslav's grubby cheese sauce covered fingers. But honestly, I was never worried about this movie, because at the end of the day, I knew Gendy was prepared to release it himself if it came down to the wire and no one else stepped up. So I wasn't worried about this one even a little bit. It was never like in the same category of imminent danger of deletion as like any of the Looney Tunes movies or Scoob Holiday Haunt, which unfortunately remains canceled at this moment. By the way, while I have you here, might as well talk about Gendy a little bit more, because I found out some additional extra things while researching this. Speaking of Gendy, while I was looking over all this, I found out that he's also supposedly working with Craig McCracken on the upcoming Original Recipe Powerpuff Girls reboot, which led to an interesting conversation he had with comicbook.com. Apparently an out-of-touch reporter grilled him and was like, "Hey, I'm not a Powerpuff Girls fan. Why don't you make more episodes of Dexter's Lab instead?" Which Gendy honestly gave a pretty dark answer to, saying that, "Well, we've done so many of them. I just don't feel like there's anything more we can do there. Also, Christine Cavanaugh was the soul of Dexter, and I just wouldn't feel right replacing her in any way." So yeah, that tracks. Dexter was in the Jellystone crossover recently, and they had like a sound-alike voice actor who just didn't 100% nail the voice. Anyway, so that's all the news about Gendy Tartakovsky I got today. I'm going to take the weekend off, I guess, and go chase a ghost. Thank you for coming around, everybody. Let me know what you think in the comments. Are you excited for this movie? Do you still want Dexter's Lab to be rebooted, I guess? Are you more excited for the Powerpuff Girls reboot, which is seemingly actually happening, even though that's been like supposedly in development for years at this point? All right, yeah, let me know what you think, and hopefully we get some more movies uncanceled from fucking Zaslav. What a monster. All right, good night, everybody.